Several years ago, I was invited to preach a service. It actually was the Sunday service at a convocation of Unitarian Universalist ministers. The sermon later became the centerpiece of my book of sermons called Reaching Deeper. I started out with a poem that was read earlier by D.H. Lawrence. I love that poem because I think it portrays us in so many, many ways. What one theologian has called a religion of sophisticated resignation, a religion of sophisticated resignation. I love that. It has its appeal, actually. Standing back, watching without commitment, kind of above it all, because we think we know how things are going to turn out anyway, so we might as well not get involved. I've actually been there. I'm guessing some of you have too. There are no gods, D.H. Lawrence says, and you can go please yourself. Have a game of tennis, go out in the car, do some shopping, sit and talk, with a cigarette browning in your fingers. Many of us have ditched the cigarette, which is good, this is good, but all the rest fits, especially for us, the talk part. Those of us without traditional gods love to talk about possibilities, can easily substitute talk for prayer, sometimes can substitute talk for action, often can substitute talk for movement into the depths of life and faith in connection with all that is. Lawrence says there are no gods and you can please yourself. Go, please yourself, but leave me alone to myself. Now, not only do we have an internal conversation, stream of music perhaps, judgments surely, but we also now, in this time, have our MP3 players, our iPods, our iTouches, our gaming computers, even solitaire on our phones, which in spite of all the social networking, and I find social networking to be a phenomenal time, a thing in our time, all this in spite of social networking is a new and even unimagined version of the words, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone to myself. And then he makes his turn. There's always a turn. The poet, the preacher, life, that little turn. And let me say here, before I make the turn, this is not a sermon about earbuds. When I left the Dallas church, the choir gave me an iTouch, which they had filled with music from over the years I had been there. It was just a fabulous gift. I forgot about it in the busyness of moving and packing and unpacking and grieving my losses. I had several losses in the last few months. But one day on unpacking, I found it, and I sat down and I listened, and there they were, the children's choir, our kindred voices, the sanctuary choir. It was an incredible solace. So much of the music that as I sat in the chancel and listened over the years, and you don't even realize what a wonderful thing it is to participate in a service back and forth with the music. It returned to me again to bless me and bless me and bless me in my new life. So this is not a sermon about earbuds. But I do speak a cautionary word because we humans seem to be able to create infinite variations on the theme of leave me alone to myself. But then Lawrence makes his poetic turn and begins to describe presence. There are no gods, so leave me alone. But whose is the presence that makes the air so still and lovely to me? Whose is the presence? I had a friend and colleague I talked about yesterday in the workshop. He was a Unitarian Universalist minister, a humanist, who taught me about spiritual practice. He had one question he asked of life. It was how to experience presence in the midst of so much absence. He called it the you of life. He wrote you statements. His was not a small God, but a description of how he experienced the you, the other, the bidding presence in life, the surprises, the tragedies, all of it. He called it presence. He called his practice a conversation with presence. Whose is that presence? Harry Schofield asked, along with the poet. D.H. Lawrence said, it's like, and you'll find out, I'll say more about this, but you always hear, it's like this, it's like that. We never can hit it quite straight on. We tell it slant. The presence, whose is that presence? It's like a pool into which we plunge or do not plunge. I like to think of it as the primary, perhaps the ultimate spiritual practice, this plunging into a pool, this choosing to plunge into what is. About the time I was writing the sermon for the minister's convocation, I read an article in a Dallas newspaper about a young diver at Southern Methodist University. Cheryl Santini was her name. Like a pool into which we plunge was on my mind. I decided to call her up and ask her what it was like. And this is what she said. It's in the Reaching Deeper book. When you dive, she said, you're always afraid. You don't know how you're going to land, so there's always that fear. But the fear is important because it helps you focus. You want to have enough fear to help you concentrate. She said, sometimes my mind starts to race and I start thinking, what if? What if I come too close to the board and hit it, which I think is a very reasonable thing to think about. What if I forget how to do the dive? I start second-guessing myself. My coach tells me that when fear starts to paralyze me, it's usually because I'm indulging in over-analysis. That's that talk. I have to learn to think of the whole, she said, and let my body dive.